all my friends in the same room and some new faces. You've heard my story already, but I think I can shed some new light. Okay, September 2nd, can you hear me okay? 2016. Dear Jack, it is September 2nd, your birthday. I'm alone on my sofa on Martha's Vineyard editing our book. This is my gift to you, Jack. I've not moved from this spot for the last 9 hours, determined to complete the manuscript for you, for us, and hopefully for others on your 23rd birthday. At first I thought that 8 months of writing does not make for a very good book, but the fact is, I've been writing for 23 years. I am not attached to the outcome. If I keep it tucked under my pillow to treasure, I'm fine with that. If your story can help someone gripped by addiction so they can see the tragic outcome that lies ahead, or if the resources and my journey of healing can aid others suffering from grief, it would be my honor. I will continue on my journey of healing, seeking, and longing. I know you're in good hands, loving hands. I only wish they were mine. Love, Mom. I'm Bates Conroy. For those of you who don't know me, I'm your neighbor. I'm a resident in Chilmark. I live up in Menemsha. I have a little cozy cottage, and I've recently made it my permanent residence. I love this island, which is why I spent the last 3 years in my house using the surrounding nature, water, food, and friends to heal myself. I've worn many hats in this life, like most of us, and today I'm here as a mom. I'm not an expert in addiction, recovery, or anything else for that matter. I'm not a doctor, not a psychologist, not a psychic, just a mom needing answers. I need to know what else I could have done. Since Jack passed, I've been consumed by learning the physical, emotional, and spiritual mechanics at play in addiction. I can't help Jack anymore, but together we can help others. December 25th, 2015, I spent Christmas alone. It was 9 months since my 21-year-old son, Jack, died of a heroin overdose, April 1st, 2015. I couldn't do the traditional Christmas. It was too sad and overwhelming. And while I was alone, I wrote an intention to write mine and Jack's story. I wrote it down, I visualized it, I said it out loud, and here it is 2.5 years later. During my kids' younger years, I would journal on the happenings in their life and mine. With Jack, the letters turned into a way to communicate with him during his very difficult teenage years. Following his death, I continued to write to Jack, trying to reach him, trying to heal myself. I didn't know I was actively moving the emotion, the pain and grief through my writing. It all culminated into this book, Dear Jack, a Love Letter, with the hopes that mine and Jack's experience will bring understanding and hope to those suffering. The book is a raw collection of memories, letters, photographs that document our life together. Dear Jack is a platform to begin advocating for change in the way we view and treat drug addiction and rehabilitation in America. I believe we need to restore, not rehabilitate our loved ones to be whole. For the addict, we need to approach our loved one with compassion and love versus shame and punishment. And for the families, we need to destigmatize addiction and mental health so that families can ask for help. The impact that addiction has had on the whole family is a grim consequence of the addict's behavior. Families living with an addict are under considerable stress. They accept chaos as a norm. June 26, 2009. Dear Jack, I'm having difficulty finding the words to capture the feelings I have. I struggle to find you in all the behaviors that surround you. I know you in your soul, mothers know. I know the gifts you have been blessed with. The gifts that you have been blessed with include strength and beauty, agility, deep goodness, compassion, wisdom, and an uncanny ability to figure things out. These qualities that are true to your soul have been overshadowed by behaviors that are dark, like a cloud that covers the best of you. I am profoundly sad and afraid. You have so much to offer and are capable of great things. You will not reach your potential following the path of destruction that you are choosing. I love you. Families try everything, often without enlisting the help of friends and loved ones that they so desperately need. If your child had cancer, you would seek support. People would stop by with prepared meals. But when it's addiction, it's different. I believe it is because the general population is uninformed. So what is addiction? I've spent the last 2 years trying to understand. I wasn't able to research all the options for Jack's care. I didn't have the wherewithal. I sought out the experts and followed their advice. I had my finger in the dike. Life was scary and chaotic, and I was trying to keep Jack and myself alive. I was not alone on this journey. The following statistics are from 2016. I had to go back a few years to create a level comparison. But in Martha's Vineyard, the ER reported that the staff treated 45 people from opioid overdose, almost 1 per week, and 3 opioid deaths on Martha's Vineyard. The same time frame, 2016, in Massachusetts, there were 1,933 overall deaths statewide. And in the United States, there were 64,000 overdose deaths. These statistics do not include how many people were revived with Narcan or how many people died due to complications from opioid use, like hepatitis C from needles or bacterial infections like endocarditis. When people die from these causes, the connection to opioid use is often not reported for public record. Dr. Gabor Mate is a Canadian physician and author, a renowned speaker specializing in childhood development, trauma, addiction, and lifelong impacts on physical and mental health. He says this: addiction is a response to human suffering. It is not a moral defect. It is not a weakness of character. It is not a failure of will, and it is not an inherited brain disease. It is an attempt to escape suffering. Suffering from what? Feeling alone, misunderstood, unwanted, less than? Eckhart Tolle says addiction starts with pain and ends with pain. So what is the root of this pain, this suffering? We had a happy life. Jack was a happy, heartful, helpful little boy. What happened to Jack? May 30th, 1997. Giacomo, I love you. You're always a sweet boy. You take such good care of your brother, Henry. You're always helping Mommy, and now you are loving your new baby sister. Baby Grace, our special gift from God. You're always complimenting your new baby sister on her beautiful dress or beautiful hair. You're such a sweet boy. What are the chances of Willie and Grace to be born on the same day? You had a great year at school. You have lots of friends. School's out for summer, and you'll be starting camp. I love you, Jack, to the moon and back. Love, Mommy. Need tissue. It wasn't until I closed the pages of this book for good that I had some clarity to dive into these difficult questions. The first realization came as I prepared lists of resources for those suffering. I have a section on addiction and recovery and grief and healing in the book. Compiling the list of websites, authors, YouTube videos, and articles, I realized the list for recovery and healing were the same. Jack and I, tissues, everyone. More, anybody want tissue? I'm sorry. So I realized the lists of recovery and healing were the same. Jack and I were suffering from the same condition, a disconnection with self. Drugs, chaos, discord cause a separation from each other and from ourselves. Johann Hari is a British author, and in a TED Talk, he described his search for answers as he saw loved ones in the grips of addiction. He wanted to know why. He traveled the world for answers, and he describes it is our human nature to be connected. We are social creatures, but what happens when we are not bonded and connected with self, others, and nature? He describes an experiment conducted by Bruce Alexander, a professor of psychology in Vancouver. The studies were designed to understand the chemical hooks in opioids in conjunction with social stimuli. The experiment was called the Rat Park Experiment in 1970. The experiment included a rat in a cage with 2 water bottles. One was plain water, the other was heroin or cocaine. The rat would repeatedly drink from the laced water bottle and 90% of the time overdose and died. He realized this was not a fair experiment. The rat was alone with no social interaction. He changed the experiment to Rat Park. Same 2 water bottles, but this time other rats of both genders were introduced, tunnels and wheels, lots of social activity. The rats chose the plain water. The original experiment left the rats socially disengaged, separate from other rats, disconnected. Sometimes we can't connect with ourselves or others because of our cage. And not all cages are made of metal or wire. Some of them are made of memories, emotions, and traumatic experiences. So how do we get our loved ones out of the cage? What I've learned from this experience, both for me and for Jack, is that healing comes from the inside. This connection with others and with self is what is missing from the addict. The disconnection with self can occur many ways, from a traumatic experience, trapped emotions, social isolation, injury, illness. There's many ways to disconnect. This separation from yourself and others that occurs is almost like not being comfortable in your own skin. Feeling uncomfortable can make one turn to things that will soothe that and promote comfort. The trouble is that the things that cover the bad feelings are not always so healthy for us. When a loved one is an addict, it can be frightening, infuriating, and heartbreaking. Experts told me, cut him off, kick him out, tough love. But I believe we need to change how we view addicts. They are already in pain. They need love, not more suffering. In the West, so often we try to solve problems with the external. Doctors and therapists try to solve our problems, but nobody can really solve other people's problems. We have to solve them ourselves. We need to learn how to go in, how to reconnect with self. Sure, we need guidance and tools, but in the end, it is up to us. We are not trapped in our cage. We have the tools to heal, but we have to uncover what needs to be healed first. The samskaras, as they're called in the yoga science, thank you, Sherry, need to be removed, need to be cleared, get rid of those distractions and find our own truth. I met a man the other day that works with a concept that is the beginning to the answer. Working with troubled and addicted kids, he begins with the question, what happened to you? Finding the root of the problem. Not once did anyone suggest this approach for Jack. It was just stop using, get to a meeting, 12 steps. That would never have worked. He couldn't stop. The drugs were a symptom of something else, but the problem was never addressed. During the years leading up to April 1st, 2015, when Jack died, our lives were in crisis. It was impossible for him or me to find a place of clarity. He was always high, and I was usually crying or just being afraid. It wasn't like I was doing research on where Jack was headed with any degree of expertise. It was all so new to me. But on my search to find the truth in all things, I have that information for you and others. So much research has been done around addiction, but it's still on the fringe. Still, fancy rehabs and sober living are the go-to option. But there are more, and I'm providing them for you at the back of the book, and also updating my new findings on my website, dearjack.love. The loved ones must get informed. There are alternative treatments for addiction, recovery, and healing. Most treatments and treatment centers provide the same program for all in attendance versus individualized approach. Jack was in and out of 4 rehabs. None of them worked for him. He might have gone to more, but unless he faced his internal rattling, no amount of rehab would help him. I know they do work for some, but again, no 2 people are the same. That is why the treatments must be individual. They were never going to work for Jack because of unprocessed wounds and the fact that he was 21 and invincible. Jack needed more time. He needed to grow up, and he's not alone. This epidemic is claiming a generation of kids. Addiction is a chronic disease. The initial decision to take drugs is voluntary for most people, but repeated drug use can lead to brain changes that challenge an addicted person's self-control and interfere with the ability to resist intense urges. As with other chronic health conditions, treatment should be adjusted based on how the patient responds. Treatment plans need to be reviewed based on the individual and their changing needs. No one factor determines if a person will become addicted. A combination of factors increase the risk. The more risk factors, the greater the chance. Like environmental influences, family and friends, economic status, peer pressure, abuse, developmental changes. As we search for our internal wounds, we must also realize what impacts one individual may not impact another. My friend described a scene from a short film that she was working on of 2 men sitting at a bar. The one man was in tears, describing a scene he remembered as a little boy, tugging on his mother's skirt, telling her that he loved her, and she brushed him away, saying, "Not now, I'm busy." While the other man in tears described how his mother burned him up and down with her cigarette. We can't compare pain and suffering. It's different for all of us. Gabor Mate says all addiction starts with suffering. However, not all suffering ends in addiction. It just depends. But the gig is up addiction. We know we will not be fixed from the outside. We have to go in, heal from the inside. This is very hard and scary work. It is the only way out. No pill, rehab, or doctors can do it for us. The only way out is in. The afflicted need to be restored to balance and harmony within. That cannot happen with a punitive approach. It must be with love and compassion. One of my healing practices has been writing. In fall of 2015, I attended Nancy Aroney's writing workshop up in Chilmark. It was a wonderful experience, writing to a prompt. I was trying to clear some of my scars. One of the prompts was something like this: what I didn't tell you then, ... I was afraid to write it at the time, but writing it 3 years later, it looks a little different. What I didn't tell you then was there were real experts that no one was talking about: Dr. Gabor Mate, Bruce Alexander, and Johan Hari. What I didn't tell you then is that rehab facilities are unregulated. There is no national organization to monitor and ensure quality and scientifically proven treatments are in place. They are usually privately owned companies that charge steep prices to administer whatever therapeutic treatments or regimens they so choose. What I didn't tell you then was you were struggling, and I never realized you were in pain. I was angry, and we were both afraid. There were alternative options, and I found them too late. What I didn't tell you then enough times is how much I love you. I didn't know you disconnected with yourself. I needed to help reconnect you. What I didn't tell you then was when the afflicted have the ability to actively engage in activities or communities that fulfill them, that gives them meaning to their lives, whether that's a job, a hobby, or just spending time with people that they love, that is what saves lives. What I didn't tell you then was AA works for some. Most of my closest friends are in recovery and swear by the 12 steps. But alcohol and heroin are very different substances. It's a smoking gun, and it kills fast. What I didn't tell you then was the disease is individual, the trauma is individual, and the solution is individual. Going to a one-size-fits-all 30-day rehab is not necessarily going to cover it. It works for some, but not all. What I didn't tell you then was I wish I was more informed. It seemed to happen so fast. We needed more options, not just the conventional ones, not just what the expert told us. I wish I knew to think outside the box. When you're trying conventional methods and not seeing results, don't give up or keep blindly going. Try other solutions. Check out dearjack.love for all this information and more on alternative treatments. Some alternatives I wish I had looked into for Jack included plant-based shamanic medicine, treatments like ibogaine and ayahuasca, psychedelics, counseling perhaps with a psychic or intuitive reader, meeting with an addiction specialist and/or addiction recovery coach. I didn't try everything. I can assure you, regret is almost worse than grief. Do everything. Just this year, the New York Times reported the number of overdose deaths keep rising at a drastic rate. They go on to say the current heroin epidemic cannot go ignored. The new generation of youth is already endangered. If those statistics are to change, it requires more people waking up to the stark reality of thousands of lives lost in such a senseless way. Drug rehabilitation and heroin treatment and opioids must be national concerns in focus. Organizations like Shatterproof are attacking this at a national level. This is from their website. Every day, 174 of our sons, daughters, and loved ones die from a drug overdose. Only 1 in 10 Americans with addiction receive any form of treatment, and that treatment is rarely based on proven research. Countless families experience so much shame and stigma, pain, and suffering. This crisis needs to end. Many other diseases have been harmfully burdened by stigma at some point. Cancer and HIV are 2 notable examples. Years ago, people used to whisper about the C word. Cancer was taboo, and people who developed the disease were often isolated. But as cancer victims began talking openly, sharing their personal stories, and uniting their communities, the stigma began to subside. Today, cancer awareness events, fundraisers, and organizations are plentiful. People might be surprised to learn that the disease was ever considered a shameful secret. And all that awareness has led to funding for important research that is saving lives today. HIV awareness and treatment followed a similar path. In the 1980s, when little was known about how HIV was spread, the public developed irrational fears and prejudices about individuals living with the virus. According to the World Health Organization, this stigma was the #1 reason people were reluctant or afraid to get tested for HIV, to disclose their HIV positive status, or to get treatment for their illness. So this narrative must change, and this is my contribution. I'm a mom, not an expert, but I'm going to fight this fight, and I ask you to join me and carry this message over the finish line. Whatever role you're playing as the addicted or a loved one of the addicted, we must get clear, listen to our intuition, and find a path to healing with whatever practice works for you. That could be a walk on the beach, a meditation, counseling, medications that provide alternative healing, group support, psychedelics, plant-based options for healing and connecting. I found Martha's Vineyard's healing powers helped me. I made it my life's work to try to find some inner peace. I've tried everything. I went to painting workshops, writing workshops, yoga workshops, shaman workshops. I worked with pastors, with counselors, intuitives, psychics, grief counselors. I'm not sure any of it worked. I'm certain without these practices, I would have been worse off. But I've yet to find any peace. I have found a lost connection with myself, however, and I need to offer some compassion to me like I would do for a friend. There's no way around addiction, grief, and loss. You must walk through it, uncover the hidden secrets, process them, and remove them for good. Or if you must, put them on a shelf in a box and open it now and again, but put it back. As Johann says in his TED Talk, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. This, my love, is my final love letter, one I never wanted to write. Dear Jack, I'm desperate without you. I know you're at peace. Please watch over us as Dad, Will, Henry, Grace, and I start down this road without you. I've much invested in this place we call heaven. My dearest souls abide there. This is too much for us to bear. But we find comfort knowing you are safe. I'm so mad at you for leaving us. I know our souls will be together again, and we will soar on angel wings together in true love. Forever and ever, my love. Mom.